So for this last lesson, what I thought would be kind of fun to do is to just kind of take a step back, away from a lot of the prescriptive, kind of like to do instructional type content, and get into some of the biggest personal lessons and reflections from the last 10 years in my own career in the business world. And I actually outlined several of the biggest takeaways and experiences that I've gone through, and I thought I would go through those within this lesson. The first thing I want to talk about is monetization. For me, when I was ready to monetize my audience I was at about 50,000 followers on New Earth Knowledge before I decided to try to monetize. I did it in two phases, and so I had a bit of a strategy around this. Phase one was the what I would call the soft sell phase. I simply wanted to get my revenue engine going. Initially, I wanted to wait to put an offer in front of my followers, and I waited to the last minute. I didn't try to monetize right away. Um, while I think it's certainly okay to monetize at 1,000 followers, um, I wanted to let my goodwill accrue, especially because of the space that I was in, which was spiritual awakening and kind of like new age wisdom. And so I knew a lot of my followers, like they were more sensitive to calls to action and to pitches than the average. So I wanted to allow that goodwill to accrue, yet I still wanted to earn income from the brand. So what I did is I started off with a couple of non-invasive options. I set up AdSense on my website, and I started seeking out brand partners or sponsors through a friend, Anton, who owns an agency that brokers promotional deals between creators and influencers. And I started running those native sponsorships that were completely in line with my brand. And so I would create the actual posts. I would take the influencers' direction or their goal, and then I would create a fresh post that was totally in my existing style and brand formatting, totally aligned with my viewpoints, so that it didn't feel like an ad at all, but more like a collab to the quality that I would post anyway. These are win-win deals because other people would create content or tell me what they wanted to say in the content. I would simply format it into my templates and give it an edit or a proofread, and then I would publish. I basically got paid to let other people create my content. Each brand deal put anywhere from 100 to 300 bucks in my pocket, while Google Ads on my site made negligible couch change, but uh, enough together, I would say, to fund a week's worth of freelancer fees, some boosted posts, and my weekly acai bowl, right? So like nothing life-changing, but enough to where it was still meaningful. Phase two was more like the overt offer stage, where after about 2 years of dedicated brand building and giving abundantly and freely to my audience, I was ready to go for the gold, so to speak. I was ready to propose an offer. And so I hoped that my audience wouldn't think that I was just selling out or trying to use them to get rich. I didn't know for sure. I didn't even know the right way to do it or the right offer to go with. But I felt that the timing was right after about 24 months of consistent content output. And I had to take a shot at going full time with the page. And I knew that this would be the only way. So I decided to invest in my first business as an independent Kangen water distributor, which, if you're not familiar, Kangen is a network marketing franchise, essentially. They don't market it as such, but that's basically what it is, run by a company called Enagic. The product itself gelled really well with my brand and with my own values and the energy that I was already sharing across social, really helping or extending my ability to cater to a health conscious audience who I assumed would jump at the big ticket offer. By buying into the business under an existing distributor and becoming one yourself, not only did you get the best reverse osmosis water machine in the world, but you would also de facto be able to start making money again as an independent distributor yourself. The commission structure, which I really, really liked, was unlike any other that I'd ever seen before. And I had looked at probably two or three other similar network marketing opportunities in the past, but The way that Kangen's commission structure is set up, it truly is unique, and I believe they even talk about it as being proprietary. And so I felt really good about this investment just from a heart-centered and congruence standpoint. I was very much aligned with the business, and I knew that at this point my audience trusted me. So I figured again that they would be all over it. As you can probably infer, the business never took off. Um, I made several sales. I think I brought 4 or 5 people in under me, but given my audience of about 50,000 at the time, that was a big letdown. And it was my first entrepreneurial venture. And I had failed, but I failed fast. I felt intuitively when it was time to move on. And so I did so quickly. I didn't linger. I didn't try to force something that just wasn't working. But I also walked away with wisdom. And so I want to lay out 5 other learnings that I took from the experience over the 2.5 or 3 years that I was pushing Kangen so that you don't have to waste the time and the money on these same mistakes. So, number one, do your diligence, right? Don't just run surveys or talk to a few people before going all in. You want to start selling before you make the investment. Even though I attempted to get a temperature check on just how desirable the product would be to my audience, asking is always different than selling. And words of confirmation are not the same as exchanging money and making a purchase. So don't ask people if they would buy, ask them to buy. I also learned that selling a high ticket into the lower end of the market will be challenging, right? Regardless of your offer or your ad spend. So give yourself a higher chance for success by targeting affluent demographics or businesses who have budgets. Simply going after the average Instagram follower pits you against the current from the get-go. Number two, despite the focus of my book, don't rely on inbound. You need outbound, prospecting, sales, and direct response in order to succeed. I wasn't doing much paid advertising or outbound prospecting at all, really just throwing up a few Instagram stories randomly on a weekly basis and assuming that tons of leads would flow to my inbox from there. It didn't happen. So incorporate the content community method that I outline in the book, but also pair that with paid ads and outbound prospecting, ideally beyond the scale of what you alone could achieve, bringing on 1 or 2 lead gen specialists who can actually get in your account and or prospect from within their existing socials. All right, number 3, have a process for handling hot leads, a process for lead engagement, and a process for follow-up. I had no sales script. Plenty of people had reached out or submitted a form on my website, yet I wasn't closing deals. People were standing me up on calls or going ghost after indicating interest via DM, but I wasn't implementing the RRR method that I actually shared back in module 4, as well as in the book, which was my fault and ultimately to my detriment. What I should have been doing is collecting phone numbers off the bat, integrating SMS with those people on a daily or bi-weekly basis, at least, sending more information, constantly hooking, constantly working to set up a call and follow up. I should have had automated messages in place as contingencies in case people didn't respond, in case people didn't follow up, but I wasn't. I was getting frustrated and cursing at people and just thinking, oh, well, their loss. That is a horrible mindset for any sales professional. Their loss does not equal money in your pocket, obviously. Also, you can't take it personally. It'll feel personal. It never is. Take your ego out of it, take emotion out of it, and just become a machine who executes on tasks. Almost roboticize yourself. Like, just commit to doing the activity itself and try to detach from results. So, for example, 100 outreaches per day, 25 follow-ups, and attend all of your scheduled sales calls, regardless of whether anyone responds or if they respond unfavorably or if every call gets canceled or people stand you up and fail to show up on calls. Your job is just to do the tasks that you have mapped to the end goal. And I talk about how to do this in the book, to show up, to iterate, to build momentum, and to constantly look to be a resource for people, adding value. And that becomes the barometer for success. And so developing a structure, a system, and a specified cadence around handling leads and closing sales is what I was missing there. Number 4, focus, get help, and delegate. So it's very hard to scale anything when it's just one person because fundamentally you can only do one thing well at any given time. That was another problem that I realized I had. I was literally trying to do everything on my own at the same time. I'd be like, I need an Instagram post. Then I need to make an Instagram story. Then I have my outreach. Then I have to respond to the 10 unreads in my DMs. Then I have to send out my damn newsletter and edit my podcast episode, all wrapped around my 3 calls that I have set up today. And I would have each of these tasks opened in their own tab on the same browser, like you probably do right now, plus at least 3 other tabs related to each thing. So that's what, 20 plus tabs open at any given time. And I admit, I still do this. And every time I do, I have to step back and I have to say, okay, this is not optimal for focus or flow. And so what I started trying to do is to pull out whatever I was working on into its own window. And that helped me really zone in on one thing, because otherwise I would just be jumping around every 3 minutes trying to actually do 10 things at one time, which is just a recipe for being massively unproductive, if not failure altogether. So I really had no process for productivity, right? I was the one doing everything, no support, no management, no VAs for the longest time. And I didn't realize that my ability to both sell and scale was being constrained based on those 2 things, my inefficient sporadic work and my unwillingness to hire. I needed to address both of these instantly, and I didn't even know that they were issues. Very few online businesses can scale successfully when things are one leveled. All right. And number 5, become and believe in your business. Then it won't feel like selling. If I'm being honest, I didn't really identify with the product. I didn't shift my entire identity, nor dedicate my entire page to making this my primary thing. I tried to tack it on to see if it would work without committing wholeheartedly. I was probably 85% in, but in this market, 85% is not going to work, right? Your whole page, your whole profile has to be dedicated to your thing. People need to be able to look at your page and say from memory later in their day, oh, Michael, he's the Kangen guy, or oh, Jessica, she's the Hatha yoga girl, or oh, Kevin, he's the payments automation dude. So I realized that those who were successful selling online don't just sell a product, they become it. Then they shift from feeling like a salesperson to being a servant and sharing the opportunity with other people. Massive mind shift there, right? And it'll affect how you show up. You should never be selling something that you don't love. One of my podcast guests told me this. She was like, most people selling on behalf of someone else, so for a paycheck or on a W-2, they aren't the product. They don't love it. They don't even use it. They're never going to be able to sell it. So you have to believe wholeheartedly in what you have. You've got to make it who you are. You have to live and breathe it every day and dream about it every night. And until you merge what you do, what you sell with your identity, you'll always be a little bit disconnected from it. And in this new economy, that gap may well be the difference between stagnation versus success. So these 5 lessons were really tough to embody, but they were also a rite of passage for me to be able to move on to new pastures. And after a couple of months of disillusionment and frustration, I eventually did move on to high ticket personal coaching and e-learning, and then to consulting, which proved much more fruitful and fulfilling than peddling my Kangen affiliation, even though I am still an active distributor. So if you want the best reverse osmosis water in the world, hit me up. All right, to close out, I want to end with a conversation about exponential thinking. To me, that means thinking in terms of mass market, mega trends, and movements. This is the level that I want you to start thinking on. Then everything else, the tactics, the to-dos, and the daily conversations and projects that you're working on, they're all derivative of that. They fall under the umbrella of this massive understanding of what's happening in the world and how what you're working on is tied to that. So I actually want to focus on mega trends because this is where the most leverage is, and this is what is most tangible, I think. So mega trends, tying back to the Kangen investment that I made, I saw that as a mega trend, both healthy drinking and reverse osmosis, but also Kangen specifically. When I invested, I actually had data to suggest that this thing was going to take off, and I still believe that it may do that. And so a quick definition for megatrends. Megatrends are products or niches that most people don't yet know about, but that the majority will one day become a part of. As the democratization of value demonstrates, the world is moving toward this type of economy, one where a few big sectors are fueled by a few major needs, fulfilled by a few big companies who provide a few amazing products. In Amazon's case, you obviously have, I don't even know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of products, right? The goal is to position yourself in front of these high potential opportunities before the masses get there, to make big bets on the future. But what determines whether something is just a fad or a mega trend in the making? What makes some products catch on while others fade away? And what's the secret to spreading the word once gold is struck? After analyzing some of the most game changing inventions of the last few decades, I've unveiled 5 traits that all megatrend product movements seem to have in common. So think about how you can either become a part of these, whether as a startup founder or joining a scale up company or just participating in an interest group, whatever, just get into these conversations and these communities, or how you might be able to integrate these takeaways into what you do now, starting to think a little bit differently about your operation and how you execute. Okay, so megatrends, they do these 5 things. They can be used by anyone. They must connect people. They solve a big unaddressed problem. Their utility is intuitively understood, and they have a low cost of replication, of scale, or to add new users. Megatrends may or may not take a while to become mainstream, but once they do, everyone has to have them. They become sort of like a badge of pride and will soon be something that are indispensable to our lives. We'll be hard pressed to imagine how we ever lived without them. The iPhone is a great example. So even if you're not working on the next global phenomenon, how can you transform what you offer now into the most sticky product possible using these principles? If you create a megatrend and bring it to market, there's obviously tremendous wealth to be had. Discovering some variation of this formula is how virtually every ultra successful billionaire in any consumer segment or business to business niche has become that way. Jobs with the Mac and iPhone, Bezos with ultra fast fulfillment at Amazon, Sam Walton with cheap prices on any household goods for Walmart. All of the most accomplished entrepreneurs who I've spoken to in my career and on my podcast, who produce a quadratic impact in the work that they do not think linearly. They all think bigger, exponentially, in terms of platforms, globalization, high margins, economies of scale, and atomic networks. They know that to shake things up and be remembered, creators have to recalibrate their entrepreneurial muscles toward this kind of thinking. These are the foundations of tomorrow's online empires and the entrepreneurs behind them. So with that, I thank you so much for being a part of the Content Capitalist Academy. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can always reach me. I'm only a message or a text away. And this has been Michael Becker with Content Capitalist Academy signing off.